The stagecoach rattled into Camp Verde, Arizona on the coldest February morning the territory had seen in 20 years, and Eliza Reed stepped down onto frozen ground with fingers so numb she could barely feel the railing she gripped. She had traveled 3 weeks from Boston, crossing half a continent to marry a man she had never met, and now as bitter wind cut through her wool traveling dress like it was made of cotton, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The year was 1879, and she was 22 years old alone in the West, and so cold her entire body ached with it. The stage driver hauled down her trunk, his breath making white clouds in the crystalline air. Camp Verde was nothing like she had imagined. The photographs Mr. Samuel Brennan had sent showed a dusty frontier town baked under endless sun, but this morning the desert mountains were dusted with snow and icicles hung from every wooden overhang. Her teeth chattered so violently she bit her tongue. "You the bride for Sam Brennan?" the driver asked, his voice gruff but not unkind. She nodded, unable to trust her voice, and wrapped her arms around herself. Her gloves were thin city gloves, meant for autumn walks in Boston Common, not this high desert cold that seemed to freeze the marrow in her bones. She had expected heat and dust, not this biting wind that made her eyes water. "Sam's place is about 5 miles north," the driver said, pointing toward distant hills. "Someone should be coming for you. You can wait in the saloon there if you want to get warm." But Eliza could not make her feet move. Everything in her screamed to get back on that stage, to return to Boston and admit defeat, to face her stepmother's satisfied smile and her father's disappointment rather than continue this mad journey. Her hands shook so badly she could not clasp them together, and when she tried to pick up her carpet bag, it slipped from her trembling fingers. That was when she heard the horse approaching at a fast trot. She turned, squinting against the bright, cold sunlight, and saw a man riding toward the stage stop on a rangy bay horse. He sat tall in the saddle, broad-shouldered under a heavy canvas coat, and as he drew closer she could see the concern etched on his weathered face. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with dark hair touching his collar beneath his wide-brimmed hat, and eyes the color of strong coffee. "You Miss Reed?" he called out as he dismounted in one fluid motion. "The mail order bride for Sam Brennan?" Again she could only nod, her jaw locked tight against the shivers that racked her body. The man's eyes widened as he took in her inadequate clothing, her blue-tinged lips, the way her whole frame trembled. "Good God," he said, and his voice held genuine alarm. "You are half frozen." He closed the distance between them in 3 long strides, and before she could speak or protest, he took both her hands in his own. His hands were large and calloused, warm from riding in leather gloves, and the heat of them against her frozen fingers was almost painful. Eliza gasped at the sensation, feeling returning to her numb extremities in sharp tingles. The cowboy held her hands carefully between both of his, as one might cup water to drink, and brought them close to his chest where more warmth radiated through his coat. "I'm August Miller," he said, his voice low and steady. "I work the ranch next to Sam's place. He sent me to fetch you because his wagon wheel broke yesterday." His hands tightened gently around hers. "How long have you been this cold?" "Since Flagstaff," she managed through chattering teeth. "2 days. I did not know it would be like this. The letter said Arizona was hot." "It is most of the year," August said, frowning. "But we get a cold snap sometimes in February. This is the worst I have seen." He glanced at her thin coat and city dress with something like anger flashing in his dark eyes. "Did Sam not tell you to bring winter clothes?" "He said to bring light clothing for desert heat," Eliza said, and despite everything, despite the cold and fear and exhaustion, she felt a spark of anger herself. Nothing about snow or ice. August's jaw tightened, but he said nothing about Sam Brennan. Instead, he kept holding her hands, rubbing his thumbs gently across her knuckles, encouraging circulation. The simple gesture felt impossibly intimate, this stranger touching her bare skin, but Eliza could not bring herself to pull away. The warmth was too precious, and something in his steady gaze made her feel safer than she had felt since leaving Boston. "Can you feel your fingers yet?" he asked after a long moment. "Yes," she whispered. "Thank you." "Can you feel your toes?" She wiggled them experimentally in her leather boots and winced. "A little." He released one of her hands but kept hold of the other and turned to the stage driver who was watching with open curiosity. "Tom, is that stage going back to Prescott today?" "Tomorrow morning," Tom replied. August nodded slowly, then looked back at Eliza. His eyes searched her face with an intensity that made her heart flutter in a way that had nothing to do with the cold. "Miss Reed, I am going to speak plainly because you deserve honesty. Sam Brennan is a decent enough rancher, but he is careless about details. If he did not think to tell you about winter clothing, there are probably other things he failed to mention. You have every right to get back on that stage tomorrow and go home, and nobody would blame you for it." "I have no home to return to," Eliza said quietly. "My mother died when I was young. My father remarried, and his new wife made it clear I was not welcome. This was my choice." Understanding flickered in August's expression, and something else, something that looked like determination. "Then we need to get you somewhere warm and get you proper clothes. My sister Rosalie runs the general store here in town. She can outfit you with what you need." "I have very little money," Eliza admitted, shame heating her frozen cheeks. "Sam will pay for it," August said firmly. "He should have sent you money for the journey anyway. If he argues, I will pay for it myself." He finally released her other hand, but only to shrug out of his heavy coat. Before she could protest, he draped it around her shoulders. It was enormous on her small frame, and still warm from his body, and smelled of leather and sage and something uniquely masculine. "You will freeze," she objected. "I have been working in this cold all morning. You have been sitting in a freezing stagecoach for 2 days. You need it more." He picked up her carpet bag with one hand and offered her his arm with the other. "Can you walk?" She took his arm, feeling the solid strength of him through his shirt, and let him guide her down the street toward a wooden building with a painted sign that read Miller General Store. The coat dragged on the ground behind her, but she clutched it closed with her free hand, grateful for every bit of warmth it provided. August moved slowly, matching his pace to her stiff, careful steps, and when she stumbled on the uneven ground, he steadied her without comment. The store was blessedly warm, heated by a pot-bellied stove in the corner. A woman looked up from behind the counter, and Eliza saw the family resemblance immediately. Rosalie Miller had the same dark hair and coffee-colored eyes as her brother, though her face was rounder and softer, and she wore her hair in a practical braid down her back. "August, who is this poor frozen creature you have brought me?" Rosalie asked, already coming around the counter with a blanket in her hands. "Eliza Reed, Sam Brennan's mail-order bride," August said. "She needs winter clothing, boots, coat, gloves, everything. Sam did not tell her to bring anything warm." Rosalie's expression darkened. "That foolish man. Come here, dear. Let me look at you." She wrapped the blanket around Eliza's shoulders over August's coat and led her closer to the stove. "Your lips are still blue. August, make her some hot coffee. There is a pot on the stove in the back." August disappeared through a doorway, and Rosalie began efficiently assessing Eliza's size with a practiced eye. "You are tiny. I have some things that might fit. Did you really come all the way from Massachusetts dressed like that?" "I thought Arizona was supposed to be hot," Eliza said, and to her horror she felt tears prickling at her eyes. The warmth of the store after the brutal cold had broken something loose inside her, and suddenly she was shaking not just with cold, but with delayed fear and exhaustion and the overwhelming strangeness of everything. "Oh, honey," Rosalie said gently and pulled her into a motherly embrace. "You are going to be all right. We will get you warm and properly dressed, and then we will figure out what to do next." Eliza found herself crying into the stranger's shoulder while August returned with hot coffee that burned her throat going down, but spread warmth through her chest. She felt ridiculous and weak, But Rosalie just held her and made soothing sounds until the tears stopped, and August stood nearby looking simultaneously uncomfortable and fiercely protective. When she finally pulled away, wiping her eyes with embarrassment, Rosalie handed her a handkerchief and said, "Better now?" "Good. Drink that coffee while I gather what you need." Over the next hour, Rosalie outfitted Eliza with warm clothes more thoroughly than her own mother ever had. Woolen stockings, a flannel union suit, a heavy divided riding skirt in practical brown wool, 2 warm shirt waists, a sheepskin-lined coat, leather gloves lined with rabbit fur, and sturdy boots that laced up to her knees. August sat near the stove, ostensibly reading a newspaper, but Eliza noticed he kept glancing over to make sure she was all right. "You can change in the back room," Rosalie said. "Get out of those thin city clothes and into something that will keep you alive." Eliza changed gratefully, her fingers still clumsy with cold, as she fumbled with buttons and laces. The warm flannel against her skin felt like heaven, and the riding skirt, while foreign to her, was lined with soft wool that trapped heat against her legs. When she emerged in her new outfit, August looked up, and something flickered in his expression, there and gone so quickly she almost missed it. "Better," he said simply. "You look like you might survive now." "How much do I owe you?" Eliza asked Rosalie, dreading the answer. $23, Rosalie said, "which August will collect from Sam Brennan before the day is out." "And if he will not pay it?" Eliza asked. "Then I will," August said, standing and folding the newspaper. "But he will pay it. I will make sure of that." There was steel in his voice that made Eliza believe him. "Miss Reed," August continued, looking at her seriously, "I need to be honest with you about something. Sam's ranch is rough. He lives alone in a 2-room cabin with no proper kitchen and minimal furniture. He works hard, but he is not much for homemaking. I just want you to know what you are riding into." "Are you trying to discourage me from marrying him?" Eliza asked, searching his face. August was quiet for a moment. "I am trying to make sure you know you have choices. Sam is not a bad man, but I think maybe he painted a rosier picture than reality warrants. You seemed like you were about to shake apart when you got off that stage, and something in me just—" He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. "I could not stand seeing you like that." "I do not understand," Eliza said softly. "You do not know me at all." "No," August agreed. "But I know you came all this way on faith, and I know you were freezing and afraid, and I know Sam should have taken better care in his arrangements. That seems like enough to matter." Something warm unfurled in Eliza's chest that had nothing to do with the clothes or the stove, and everything to do with the earnest concern in this cowboy's dark eyes. She had known him less than 2 hours, but he had shown her more consideration than her fiancé had in 6 months of correspondence. "I should meet him," she said finally. "I made a promise to come, and I need to at least meet him before I make any decisions." August nodded, though she thought she detected disappointment in his expression. "That is fair. I will take you out to his place, but Miss Reed, if you get there and you do not like what you see, you tell me. I will bring you back to town myself, and we will figure out something else." "Why are you being so kind to me?" Eliza asked, the question bursting out before she could stop it. August looked at her for a long moment, and even Rosalie had gone quiet, watching her brother with knowing eyes. "I suppose," he said slowly, "because when I saw you step off that stage, shaking so hard you could barely stand, looking lost and cold and brave all at once, something in my chest just clenched up tight. And when I took your hands to warm them and you looked at me with those big, scared eyes, I thought to myself that any man who would let a woman suffer like that without proper preparation was a damned fool. Pardon my language." Eliza's breath caught in her throat. She should not be feeling this way about a man who was not her fiancé, this flutter in her stomach and warmth in her cheeks. But there it was anyway, undeniable as the sunrise. Rosalie cleared her throat delicately. "August, why don't you go settle the bill with Sam while I pack up Miss Reed's things? You can take her out there this afternoon." August seemed grateful for the escape. He settled his hat back on his head and headed for the door, pausing only to say, I will be back within the hour." When he was gone, Rosalie turned to Eliza with a gentle smile. "My brother is a good man, in case you were wondering. The best man I know, in fact. He has a ranch of his own, about 400 acres with good water and a nice herd of cattle. He built a beautiful house last year, hoping to find a wife, but he is shy around women and has not had much luck courting." "Why are you telling me this?" Eliza asked, though she thought she knew. "Because I saw the way he looked at you," Rosalie said simply. "And I saw the way you looked at him. And I know Sam Brennan, and while he is decent enough, he is not the kind of man who warms a woman's cold hands and wraps her in his coat without being asked." Eliza felt her face flush. "I am engaged to Mr. Brennan. It would be wrong to even think about anyone else." "You are not married yet," Rosalie pointed out, "and an engagement made by letter to a man who could not be bothered to prepare properly for your arrival is not sacred scripture. You have a right to choose your own path, Eliza. May I call you Eliza?" "Yes," Eliza said softly. "And you are right. I know you are right. But I need to meet him first. I need to see for myself." "Of course you do," Rosalie agreed. "Just promise me you will be honest with yourself about what you see and what you feel. Do not marry a man out of obligation when your heart is pulling you elsewhere." Eliza could not promise that, so she said nothing. Instead, she helped Rosalie pack her old clothes into her trunk and fold the new ones carefully. They worked in companionable silence, and when August returned with a grim expression and a handful of cash, Eliza knew the conversation with Sam had not gone well. "He paid," August said, handing the money to his sister, "eventually, and he said he would be waiting at his ranch for you, Miss Reed. Are you ready to go?" Eliza nodded, buttoning her new coat all the way to her chin and pulling on the warm gloves. She was ready as she would ever be. August loaded her trunk onto a small wagon he had brought, then helped her up onto the bench seat with careful hands. He swung up beside her and clucked to the horses, and they rolled out of Camp Verde, heading north under a sky that was achingly blue and cold. The ride took over an hour across rough terrain. August kept a blanket tucked around Eliza's legs and pointed out landmarks as they went. The creek that ran year-round, the rock formation that looked like a sleeping giant, the line of cottonwoods that marked the boundary of his own property. He talked easily about the land, the cattle, the challenges of ranching in this high desert country, and Eliza found herself relaxing despite her nerves about meeting Sam. "That is my house," August said at one point, gesturing to a sturdy wood frame building visible in the distance. Even from far away, Eliza could see it was well built, with a wide porch and glass windows that caught the sunlight. Smoke rose from a stone chimney, suggesting warmth within. "I have a housekeeper who comes in during the week, Mrs. Chen. She is a widow from Prescott, and she keeps everything running smooth." "It looks lovely," Eliza said, and meant it. The house looked like a home, the kind of place where a family might grow and thrive. "Thank you," August said, and she heard pride in his voice. "I worked hard on it. Hope to fill it with children someday, God willing." The unspoken words hung in the air between them. With the right woman. Eliza felt her heart ache with longing for something she had no right to want. This man beside her, with his kind eyes and gentle hands and solid strength, this was the kind of man she had dreamed of when she was young and foolish enough to believe in romance. But she was not young anymore, and she had made her choice when she answered Sam Brennan's advertisement in the Boston newspaper. Sam's ranch was smaller, rougher, just as August had warned. The cabin sat squat and weathered against the hillside with a sagging porch and a single small window. A lean-to served as a barn, and a few scrawny cattle grazed in a rocky pasture. It was not squalid exactly, but it was far from the prosperous spread Sam had described in his letters. A man emerged from the cabin as they approached, wiping his hands on his pants. Sam Brennan was shorter than August, maybe 5'9", with sandy hair thinning at the crown and a soft belly that spoke of too much whiskey and not enough hard work. He was probably in his early 40s, though it was hard to tell beneath the weathered skin and unkempt beard. He smiled as August pulled the wagon to a stop, but the smile did not quite reach his pale blue eyes. "Miss Reed," Sam called out, "welcome to your new home." August helped Eliza down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than strictly necessary. She felt the warmth of his touch even through her coat, and when she met his eyes she saw concern there, and something that looked like reluctance to let her go. "Sam," August said coolly, "here is your bride, safe and warm despite your poor planning." Sam's smile tightened. "I appreciate you fetching her, Miller. I would have done it myself if my wagon was working." "You could have sent her money for proper clothes," August said. "She nearly froze on the journey." "She is fine now, is she not?" Sam said, his voice taking on an edge. "No harm done." "No harm?" August's voice was low and dangerous. "She could barely hold a fork when I found her. Her hands were shaking so bad from cold. Another day, and she might have had frostbite." "Well, she is here and healthy, so I suppose your heroics were not needed after all," Sam said sharply. Then he seemed to remember himself and softened his tone. "But I do thank you for taking care of her, August. I will take it from here." Eliza stood between the two men, feeling the tension crackling like lightning about to strike. She looked from Sam's irritated expression to August's protective stance, and something in her chest tightened with dread. This was wrong. All of this was wrong. Sam was looking at her the way her stepmother looked at a new parlor chair, as an acquisition, a thing that would serve a purpose in his life. There was no warmth in his eyes, no real welcome, just satisfaction at having a problem solved. "Miss Reed," August said quietly, turning to her, "do you want to stay?" "We are engaged," Sam said before she could answer. "Of course she is staying. That is why she came all this way." "Let her answer," August said, not taking his eyes off Eliza. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Her hands had started shaking again. Though whether from cold or nerves she could not say, she thought about the long journey from Boston, the hopes she had harbored despite knowing better, the dreams of a new life in the West. She thought about the little money she had left, the impossibility of booking passage back east, the shame of returning defeated. And she thought about August's warm hands holding hers, his coat wrapped around her shoulders, the way he looked at her like she mattered. "I need to see inside," she finally said. "I need to see where I would be living." Sam's expression darkened, but he nodded curtly. "Fine, come on then." The inside of the cabin was as rough as the outside. One room served as kitchen, dining room, and living space, with a rusty stove, a scarred wooden table, and a single chair. The other room was visible through a doorway, a bedroom with an unmade bed and clothes strewn across the floor. There were no curtains on the windows, no rugs on the rough plank floor, no sign that anyone cared about making this place a home. It smelled of stale tobacco and unwashed dishes. Eliza stood in the center of the room and felt her dreams crumbling to ash. This was not a home. This was barely a shelter. And Sam, watching her with undisguised impatience, was not a partner. He was a man who needed a cook and a housekeeper and probably a body to warm his bed, and he had decided buying a mail-order bride was cheaper than hiring help. "It needs a woman's touch," Sam said, misreading her silence. "I figured you would fix it up nice once you got here. I'm not much for decorating and such." "Mr. Brennan," Eliza said carefully, "in your letters you described a prosperous ranch with a comfortable home. This is not what you promised." Sam's face flushed red. "Ranch is just getting started, takes time to build up a place. I thought a woman from the city would understand about working towards something." "I do understand hard work," Eliza said, feeling anger stir beneath her fear. "But I do not understand lying. You said you had a full herd of cattle. I counted maybe 20 head in that pasture. You said you had a 4-room house. This is 2 rooms and barely finished. You said you were established and looking for a wife to share your success. This is a failing ranch that needs free labor." "Now you wait just a minute," Sam started, his voice rising. "No, you wait," Eliza said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. I came all this way in good faith, nearly froze to death because you could not be bothered to warn me about the weather or send money for proper supplies and arrived to find nothing but lies. You do not want a wife, Mr. Brennan. You want a servant you do not have to pay. You are being ungrateful, Sam snarled. I paid your passage, did I not? I gave you a chance to leave that city and make something of yourself. You think you have better options, a dried-up old maid like you? The words hit like a slap, but before Eliza could respond, August was through the door and across the room. He did not touch Sam, but he put himself between them, and his presence was enough to make Sam take a step back. You will not speak to her that way, August said, his voice deadly quiet. Apologize right now, or so help me, engagement or not, I will make you regret every word. This is between me and my fiancée, Sam said, but there was fear in his eyes now. She is not your fiancée anymore, August said flatly. No woman with any sense would marry you after hearing you talk like that. Miss Reed, get back in the wagon. You cannot just take her, Sam protested. We have an agreement. An agreement based on lies, August said. She does not owe you anything. Now back up before I forget my manners entirely. Eliza did not wait to hear more. She turned and walked out of that miserable cabin, her head held high despite the tears threatening to spill. She climbed into the wagon and sat with her hands folded in her lap, shaking again, but this time with anger and relief in equal measure. August emerged moments later, carrying her trunk on one shoulder like it weighed nothing. He loaded it into the wagon bed, then climbed up beside her and gathered the reins. You will regret this, Sam called out from the porch. Both of you. August did not even look back. He just clucked to the horses and guided them away from that sorry place. They rode in silence for a long time. The only sounds the creak of the wagon and the steady clip-clop of hooves on frozen ground. Eliza stared straight ahead, trying not to cry, trying to figure out what she would do now. I am sorry, August finally said. I should have warned you more strongly. I knew Sam was rough around the edges, but I did not realize he had lied so thoroughly in his letters. It is not your fault, Eliza said, her voice thick with unshed tears. I was foolish to think this would work. To think I could just travel across the country and marry a stranger and everything would be fine. You were not foolish, August said firmly. You were brave. It takes courage to leave everything you know and try to build a new life. Sam was the fool for not seeing what a gift he was being offered. That broke something loose, and Eliza found herself crying again, though she tried to hide it. August pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to her, his face filled with such gentle concern that it made her cry harder. Eliza, he said softly, using her first name for the first time, please do not cry. You are going to be all right, I promise you. How? She asked helplessly. I have nowhere to go. I do not have enough money for a ticket back east, and even if I did, there is nothing waiting for me there. I am stranded here with no prospects and no future, and I was so stupid to think this could work. You are not stupid, August said fiercely, and you are not stranded. He reached over and took both her hands again, just as he had that morning, warming them between his own larger ones. Eliza, look at me. She raised her eyes to his, and what she saw there made her breath catch. His expression was open, vulnerable, hopeful in a way that made her heart pound. I know this is crazy, August said. I know we just met this morning, but I have been alone for a long time, waiting for something I could not even name. And then you stepped off that stage looking so lost and cold and brave, and something just clicked into place in my chest. Like I had been waiting for you without knowing it. And I know you do not know me, and I know you have no reason to trust another rancher after Sam, but I am asking you anyway, give me a chance. Let me court you properly. Stay at Rosalie's house in town. Let me take you to dinner and show you around. Let me prove to you that not all men are like Sam Brennan. Eliza stared at him, her heart racing. This was madness. She had known him less than a day, but when she looked into his dark eyes and felt his warm hands holding hers, she felt something she had never felt with Sam. not even in the earliest letters. She felt safe. She felt seen. She felt like maybe impossibly she had found something real. "What if I fall in love with you?" she whispered. "Then I would be the luckiest man in Arizona," August said simply, "because I am already halfway there myself." The sun was setting behind them, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and the cold was settling in hard for another frigid night. But sitting there in that wagon with August Miller holding her hands and looking at her like she was something precious, Eliza Reed felt warm for the first time since leaving Boston. Not just physically warm, though his hands provided that, but warm in her soul, in that place that had been frozen solid with loneliness and fear. "All right," she said, "I will stay. I will let you court me. But August, I need you to promise me something." "Anything," he said immediately. "Be honest with me, always, even when the truth is hard. I cannot survive another man's lies." "I swear it," August said solemnly. "I will never lie to you, Eliza. Not about anything that matters." She believed him. God help her. She believed him. And maybe that made her twice a fool, but she could not seem to help it. There was something in his steady gaze, in the warm pressure of his hands, in the way he had protected her and cared for her from the moment they met, that told her this was a man worth trusting. They drove into Camp Verde as darkness fell and lamps were being lit in windows all along the main street. August pulled up in front of the general store where Rosalie was just closing up for the evening. She took one look at them and seemed to understand immediately. "It did not go well with Sam?" she asked. "Sam is an ass," August said bluntly. "Pardon my language, Eliza." Rosalie sighed. "I cannot say I am surprised. What are you going to do?" "Eliza is going to stay with you for a while," August said. "If that is all right, I will pay for her room and board." "You will not," Eliza protested. "I will not be a kept woman." "You will not be," Rosalie said firmly. "You will work in the store. I have needed help for months, and if you can read and write and do basic arithmetic, you are hired. Room and board comes with the job. August, you can court her properly on Sundays after church and Wednesday evenings when the store closes early." Eliza felt tears prickling again, but this time they were tears of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she said. "Both of you. I do not know how I can ever repay such kindness." "You can repay it by being happy," Rosalie said, smiling. "Now come inside where it is warm. August, help me get her trunk upstairs. I have a spare room that will suit her perfectly." The spare room was small but clean, with a narrow bed covered in a cheerful quilt, a washstand with a porcelain pitcher and bowl, and a window that looked out over the main street. It was more than Eliza had dared hope for, and when Rosalie left her alone to settle in, she sat on the bed and finally let herself cry properly, releasing all the fear and disappointment and hope of the day. She must have cried herself to sleep because the next thing she knew it was morning and sunlight was streaming through the window. She could smell coffee brewing downstairs and hear the sounds of the store opening for business. She washed her face in cold water from the pitcher, braided her hair, and dressed in one of her new warm outfits before heading downstairs. Rosalie was arranging canned goods on a shelf and smiled when she saw Eliza. "Good morning. Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in weeks," Eliza admitted. "What can I do to help?" And just like that, she began her new life. Rosalie taught her the stock, the prices, how to measure out flour and sugar and coffee, how to handle the accounts. Eliza learned quickly, grateful for something to occupy her mind and hands. The work was satisfying in a way her aimless life in Boston had never been. Here she had a purpose, a role to play, and people genuinely appreciated her efforts. August came by every day, always with some excuse. He needed to order feed for his cattle. He wanted to check on a shipment of barbed wire. He had to pick up his sister's mail. But really, Eliza knew he came to see her. And every time he walked through that door, her heart did a little leap that she was starting to recognize as the beginning of something deeper than simple attraction. True to his word, he courted her properly. On the first Sunday, he took her to church services held in the schoolhouse where the whole town seemed curious about the mail order bride who had rejected Sam Brennan. Eliza held her head high and ignored the whispers, and August stayed close by her side, his hand at the small of her back, making it clear she was under his protection. After church, he took her on a picnic, though it was too cold to sit outside for long. They ate fried chicken and biscuits in his wagon, parked under a stand of cottonwoods, and talked for hours. He told her about growing up in Kansas, coming to Arizona with his parents and Rosalie when he was 18, losing both parents to fever 5 years ago, building his ranch from nothing. She told him about Boston, about her mother's death when she was 10, about her father's remarriage, and the slow freezing out that followed, about answering Sam's advertisement in a moment of desperation. "I am glad you answered it," August said quietly, "even though Sam turned out to be wrong, because otherwise you would never have come here, and I would never have met you." "Do you believe in fate?" Eliza asked. "I do not know," August said honestly, "but I believe some things are meant to be, and Eliza, when I saw you standing there in the cold, looking so brave and scared at the same time, something in me just knew. This is her. This is the woman I have been waiting for." "It has only been a week," Eliza whispered, though her heart was pounding. "I know," August said, "and I am not asking you to decide anything yet. I am just telling you how I feel. Is that all right?" "It is more than all right," Eliza said softly, "because I feel it too. This pull toward you like gravity. I've never felt anything like it." August reached over and took her hand, not to warm it this time, but simply to hold it. His thumb traced circles on her knuckles in a gesture that was becoming familiar and dear. "I am going to marry you, Eliza Reed," he said, his voice low and certain. "Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but soon. I am going to marry you and take you home to that house I built. And we are going to fill it with children and laughter and love. I am going to make sure you never regret answering that advertisement, even if you ended up with the wrong rancher at first." Eliza felt her eyes fill with tears again, but this time they were happy tears. "That is quite a promise, August Miller." "It is not a promise," August said, raising her hand to his lips and kissing her knuckles gently. "It is a fact. I have never been more sure of anything in my life." And looking into his warm brown eyes, feeling the solid strength of him beside her, Eliza found she believed him completely. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm that felt both new and timeless. Eliza worked in the store during the day, learning the business and getting to know the townspeople. At night she had dinner with Rosalie, and they would talk for hours about everything and nothing. And on Sundays and Wednesday evenings, August would come courting with flowers picked from his winter garden or candy from Prescott. Or once a book of poetry he had ridden 30 miles to purchase because she mentioned loving Wordsworth. They went on long rides when the weather warmed a bit, August showing her every corner of his ranch. She saw the house up close and marveled at the craftsmanship, the sturdy joists and smooth floorboards, the wide windows that let in light, the big kitchen with a modern stove and a hand pump for water right at the sink. It was a house built with love, built with hopes for a family, and Eliza could picture herself there so clearly it made her ache. He introduced her to his cattle, pointing out the breeding stock he was most proud of. Explaining his plans for expanding the herd, he showed her the vegetable garden he wanted to plant in spring, the chicken coop he had built, the root cellar where they could store food for winter. Every detail showed careful planning, the work of a man who thought about the future and prepared for it. "My parents taught me to do things right," August explained as they stood on his porch watching the sunset. "Pa always said measure twice, cut once. Take your time, build it solid, and it will last. That is how I try to live." "You have done well," Eliza said. "You should be proud." "I will be proud when I have a wife to share it with," August said. He turned to her and took both her hands, and she could see he was working up his courage for something. "Eliza, I know it has only been 6 weeks, but I cannot wait any longer. I love you. I have loved you since the moment I took your cold hands and felt you trembling. I love your courage and your kindness and the way you bite your lip when you're thinking hard. I love how you have fit into this town like you always belonged here, and how my sister looks at you like the daughter she never had. I love everything about you, and I'm asking you right now, plainly and honestly, will you marry me?" Eliza's heart was so full she thought it might burst. 6 weeks ago, she had stepped off a stage into the coldest morning of her life, engaged to a man who turned out to be a liar and a fool. And now here she stood with a good man, a kind man, a man who had warmed her hands and her heart, and she knew with absolute certainty what her answer would be. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, August, I will marry you. I love you too. I think I started loving you when you wrapped me in your coat without a second thought, but I knew for certain when you stood up to Sam for me. You have shown me what a real man is, what real love looks like, and I would be honored to be your wife." August let out a whoop of joy and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around until they were both dizzy and laughing. Then he set her down gently and kissed her, and it was the first kiss for both of them, sweet and tender and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I am going to make you so happy," he promised, "every day for the rest of our lives." "You already have," Eliza said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They were married 3 weeks later in the schoolhouse, with half the town in attendance. Rosalie stood up as Eliza's bridesmaid, wearing a dress of deep blue that matched her eyes. August wore a new suit he had ordered from Prescott, and when he saw Eliza walking down the aisle in a simple white dress Rosalie had helped her make, his eyes filled with tears. The minister from Prescott had ridden out especially for the ceremony, and when he pronounced them man and wife, August kissed Eliza like she was the most precious thing in the world. The reception was held in the general store, which Rosalie had decorated with winter greenery and white ribbons. There was food and music and dancing, and Eliza danced with August until her feet hurt, not caring that they were not very good at it, just happy to be in his arms. When someone asked her if she regretted coming to Arizona, she laughed and said it was the best decision she had ever made. "Even though your first engagement did not work out?" the woman pressed. "Especially because of that," Eliza said, looking across the room at August, who was talking with some of the other ranchers but kept glancing over at her to make sure she was all right. "If Sam had been the man he claimed to be, I would have married him and never known what real love felt like. So I'm grateful it turned out the way it did. Every cold mile, every moment of fear and doubt, it all led me to August, and he was worth all of it." That night, August carried her over the threshold of his house, their house now, and set her down gently in the front room. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, warming the space, and Eliza looked around at what was now her home. It was beautiful and solid and full of promise, just like the man standing beside her. "Welcome home, Mrs. Miller," August said softly. "I like the sound of that," Eliza said, smiling up at him. "Mrs. Miller, Eliza Miller. It suits me." They spent their wedding night learning each other, gentle and tentative at first, then with growing confidence and passion. August was patient and kind, making sure she was comfortable, and Eliza marveled at how different this was from what she had feared marriage would be. This was not duty or obligation. This was love, pure and simple. Two people choosing each other and expressing that choice with their bodies as well as their hearts. Afterward, lying in August's arms with her head on his chest, listening to his heart beat steady and strong, Eliza thought back to that freezing morning when she had stepped off the stage. If someone had told her then that she would be here now, married to a wonderful man in a beautiful house, she would not have believed it. Life was strange and surprising, and sometimes the worst moments led to the best outcomes. "What are you thinking about?" August murmured, his fingers trailing through her loose hair. "About fate," Eliza said, "and cold hands, and how lucky I am." "I am the lucky one," August said firmly. "I get to spend the rest of my life with the bravest, most beautiful woman in Arizona." "Flatterer," Eliza teased, but she snuggled closer against him, warm and safe and loved. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. The ranch required hard work from both of them, and Eliza learned skills she had never imagined needing: how to milk cows, how to preserve vegetables, how to mend fences and treat sick cattle. Her hands, once soft and city pale, became calloused and sun-browned. But August worked beside her every day, teaching her patiently, praising her efforts, and making sure she knew she was his partner in every sense of the word. They went into town every week so Eliza could help Rosalie at the store, which she enjoyed. It kept her connected to the community and gave her a sense of purpose beyond the ranch work. The townspeople grew to love her for her kindness and her willingness to help anyone who needed it. She started a ladies' reading circle, taught children to read in the evenings, and organized a Christmas pageant that became an annual tradition. August watched her bloom with quiet pride, knowing he had been right that first morning. This woman was meant for this life, meant for him, and he thanked God every day for the cold snap that had brought her trembling into his care. Their first child, a son, was born in late October of 1880 during the first cool days of autumn. August paced outside the bedroom while Rosalie and Mrs. Chen attended the birth, and when he finally heard his son's first cry, he thought his heart might burst. Rosalie emerged with a tired smile and beckoned him in, and he found Eliza propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in soft blankets. "Meet your son," she said softly. "Aaron Matthew Miller." August sat carefully on the edge of the bed and reached out with trembling hands to touch his son's tiny face. Aaron had a shock of dark hair, and his eyes, though closed in sleep, would probably be brown, like both his parents. He was perfect, absolutely perfect, and August felt tears streaming down his face without shame. "He is beautiful," August whispered. "You are amazing. Thank you, Eliza. Thank you for this gift." "We made him together," Eliza said, smiling. "He is ours, yours, and mine." August leaned down and kissed her gently, then kissed his son's soft head. "I love you both more than words can say." They settled into parenthood with the same partnership that marked everything else in their marriage. August was hands-on with Aaron, changing diapers and walking the floor with him at night, refusing to let Eliza carry all the burden. She nursed their son while August handled the ranch work, and in the evenings they would sit together on the porch, passing Aaron back and forth, marveling at every tiny milestone. 2 years later, a daughter joined the family. Emily Rose Miller had her mother's delicate features and her father's dark coloring, and she wrapped August around her tiny finger from the moment of her birth. Then came another son, Adam, and another daughter, Ellen, until the house August had built was filled with the laughter and chaos of 4 healthy children. The ranch prospered as the children grew. August's careful planning and hard work paid off in steady growth, and by 1890 the Miller Ranch was one of the most successful in the territory. They added onto the house, building more bedrooms and a proper parlor, and Eliza finally had the piano she had always wanted. In the evenings, after the children were in bed, she would play while August sat nearby, reading or just listening, content in a way he had never imagined possible. Rosalie married a banker from Prescott in 1885 and moved away, but she visited often, delighting in being an aunt to August and Eliza's growing brood. She always said she had known from the first moment that they were meant for each other, and she took full credit for playing matchmaker, even though fate had really done the work. On their 10th wedding anniversary, August took Eliza back to the spot where he had proposed, leaving the children with a neighbor for the evening. They stood on the porch of their home, now expanded and improved, and watched the sunset paint the Arizona sky in brilliant colors. "Do you ever regret it?" August asked quietly. "Answering that advertisement? Coming all this way?" Eliza turned to him and took his hands, the way he had taken hers that long ago frozen morning. His hands were still warm, still strong, still capable of chasing away any cold that touched her. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for one single moment. That advertisement brought me to you, August. It brought me home. Yes, the journey was hard, and yes, Sam Brennan was a disappointment, but if I had to do it all again, I would. Every frozen mile, every moment of fear, because it led me to you and to this life we have built together. I fell in love with you the moment I touched your cold hands, August confessed. I have never told you that before, but it is true. They were shaking so badly, and you looked at me with those big scared eyes, and something just broke open in my chest. I knew right then that I would do anything to keep you safe and warm and happy for the rest of your life. You have kept that promise every single day, Eliza said, tears shining in her eyes. You are the best man I have ever known, August Miller, and I'm so grateful that fate brought me to you. They kissed as the sun set, middle-aged now with gray threading through their hair, but still as in love as they had been that first day. Behind them in the house, they could hear the children starting to squabble, and they smiled against each other's lips. We should get back, Eliza said reluctantly. One more minute, August said, pulling her closer. Let me just hold you for one more minute. So they stood there together, wrapped in each other's arms, while the Arizona sky darkened and stars began to appear. Inside, the children called for them, and soon they would go back to the beautiful chaos of family life. But for that moment, it was just the two of them, the cowboy and his mail-order bride, still warming each other against the cold after all these years. The children grew and thrived. Aaron inherited his father's steady nature and love of ranching, and by the time he was 18, he was running half the operation himself. Emily was bright and fierce, with a head for numbers that August said came from her mother's side. She started keeping the ranch books at 15 and was better at it than August had ever been. Adam was the wild one, always getting into scrapes, dreaming of being a lawman. And Ellen the baby was quiet and gentle, with a gift for healing that led her to study with the local doctor. August and Eliza watched their children grow with pride and occasional terror, the way all parents do. They guided and advised, but also let the children make their own choices, their own mistakes, their own paths. And when each child eventually married and started families of their own, August and Eliza found themselves grandparents, delighting in a new generation of Millers. The ranch continued to prosper into the new century. August eventually stepped back from day-to-day operations, letting Aaron take over, though he still rode the property every morning, checking on cattle and mending fences. Eliza spent her days tending a large garden, cooking for whoever happened to stop by, and doting on her grandchildren. She never lost her love of reading, and the ranch house was filled with books that she read aloud to anyone who would listen. On cold mornings, which were rare in Arizona but still happened sometimes, August would find Eliza and take her hands in his, warming them just as he had that very first day. It had become their private ritual, a reminder of how they had met, how their love had begun with that simple gesture of care. Still taking care of me, Eliza would say, smiling. Always, August would reply, until my last breath. They grew old together, their hair white, their faces lined with years of laughter and hard work and love. August's joints ached in the morning, and Eliza moved slower than she once had, but they were together, and that was what mattered. They sat on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset, surrounded by the evidence of the life they had built. Children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, a thriving ranch, a community that respected them. I kept my promise, August said one evening when he was 72 and Eliza was 68. I made you happy, did I not? You made me happier than I ever dreamed possible, Eliza said, squeezing his hand. You gave me a home, a family, a love that has sustained me through everything. You are my greatest blessing, August Miller. And you are mine, August said softly. My brave girl who stepped off that stage shaking from cold and changed my whole world. They kissed then, a gentle brush of lips worn smooth by decades of kisses, and settled back to watch the stars come out. Behind them in the house, they could hear their family gathering for Sunday dinner. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, 3 generations of Millers, all descended from a cowboy and a mail order bride who had found each other on the coldest morning Arizona had seen in 20 years. August died peacefully in his sleep at age 75, with Eliza beside him holding his hand. She grieved him deeply but without regret, knowing they had made the most of every day they had been given. She lived another 7 years, surrounded by family who loved her, telling stories about the grandfather they had adored and the love story that had started it all. On cold mornings, her grandchildren would take her hands and warm them, just as August had taught them, and she would smile and remember that frozen day in 1879 when a kind cowboy had seen a frightened mail order bride and had known instantly and certainly that she was meant to be his. It had been the beginning of everything. A marriage, a family, a legacy of love that would endure long after both of them were gone. When Eliza died at 75, they buried her beside August on a hill overlooking the ranch, beneath a cottonwood tree they had planted together 50 years earlier. The whole town came to the funeral, and person after person stood to talk about how Eliza and August had touched their lives with kindness and generosity. Their children and grandchildren wept, but they also celebrated, knowing their parents and grandparents had lived fully and loved deeply and left the world better than they found it. Aaron Miller, now an old man himself, stood at his mother's grave after everyone else had left and remembered. He remembered his father's gentleness, his mother's courage, the way they had looked at each other even after decades of marriage like they were still newly in love. He remembered the stories they told of how they met. His father warming his mother's cold hands, the instant connection that had bloomed into a lifetime of devotion. "Thank you," he said quietly to both their graves, "for showing us what love looks like, for building something that will last long after you are gone. We will carry on your legacy, and we will make sure your great-great-grandchildren know the story of the mail order bride and the cowboy who loved her from the first moment he touched her cold hands." The wind whispered through the cottonwood leaves, and Aaron could almost hear his parents laughing together, young again, standing on a porch watching a sunset with their whole lives ahead of them. He smiled through his tears and headed back down the hill toward